Happy Tuesday and welcome back to Retake the Week. Yes, we've had to do a bit of a midweek special because, well, both of us were at various LAN events during this weekend and it was quite hectic and really impossible for us to do it any sooner. So we thought rather than skip an entire week and have some ridiculous marathon show coming Sunday, we'll just do this now. We're going to interrupt my well-earned lunch break and talk about something way more interesting, Counter-Strike. So of course we've got
Yeah,
to start with what we always start with before we get into the real conversation. Uh, the self-promo stuff. My God, I am fuzzy in the head right now. Right. Members, they get access to special behind the scenes content, just like episode 6 of the behind the scenes Retake the Week episodes, just being uploaded right now. They also get access to certain interviews, as well as polls and the monthly Q&A, which enables them to answer questions of us on this show once a month. Is there anything you need to shout out, Quack? I believe there is.
we have a report out right now. It's been, dude, I'm just so messed up after this weekend. Just a lot of lost sleep, but so much fun. Right now, there's nothing in particular. We have a report out on dust2.se, which was pretty big. Would love for all of you to go read it. Pretty much our first big sort of roster leak. We're gonna talk about it a bit later. No, I'm not doing anything in particular. Follow me on Twitter.
All right, cool, great. So let's get started with the biggest event of the weekend, the Blast Premier Spring Final, hosted, of course, in the OVO Wembley Arena in London. Still a casual hour and a bit's trek for most people to get to, but hey, that's London for you. And it was, well, a pretty cool event. Unfortunately, coming into it, we were missing some of the top teams we would have wanted to see this year, as well as, I mean, Saw are cool and all, but in terms of like tier 2 rosters making an appearance, they're not high on my list of teams I want to watch. But hey, credit to them for always winning the qualifiers that count. And here we go. We were missing Mouse, but at least we did have 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7 in attendance in terms of the world rankings. And it was won by Spirit, who have had a bit of a rough go of it. I mean, until this event, they'd won Cato and then had a bunch of top fours, top eights, falling a little flat in the playoffs. And it did feel like without Donk going absolutely ballistic, we weren't seeing this Spirit roster winning any titles. Like that seemed like a prerequisite. It needed that 1.7, maybe not as explicitly that level of rating, but a similar level of impact from Donk himself. Now he was MVP here, but nowhere near as singular in his performance. Like it wasn't just him stepping up. We got great calling from Chopper. We got some really nice maps from Shiro and Zontix. Magic's wasn't spectacular, but he really didn't need to be. And so I thought this was a really great showing for them. They played good Counter-Strike. They got the most out of everyone, not just Donk. And I think they've really set the framework for how they can win events going forward. It doesn't just have to be a one-man army taking everything down.
Yeah, I mean, good event for Spirit for sure. Be hitting number 1 for the first time ever pretty much shows that. I mean, I guess they closed the season in the same way it opened it. I think perhaps all of us would have expected more of like this season would have been the Spirit season all throughout. I mean, we had, especially after Katowice, I think a lot of us were thinking like, is there really anything that could stop them from just being the best team of the season at this point? Favorites for the major and everything. So, I mean, and then of course they had a bit of a stumble. They didn't play a lot of events because since they came out of nowhere, they weren't on the ESL ranking and stuff. But even the ones they did play, they did sort of fall short. I think one in particular is Bet Boom Dacha. Let's be honest, they definitely should have won that event. I think they're really, I mean, especially with Mouse like immediately coming off the EPL win,
Yeah.
and then having to go to Belgrade like the day after. I think Spirit definitely should have won that event because they had a lot of time to prep for that. But and then Dallas, of course, I would have said Spirit should have won that, but that was also just kind of a crazy thing, wasn't it? So, but they cap out the season in a good way, and I think this sort of it doesn't. I think if they had a poor showing here in London as well. I think it would have put some question marks into if they can still be the best team of the year if they had a poor showing here. They had a very good showing. And I think they're still very much in the conversation for being team of the year. They might even, at this point, you might say they're actually leading the race, in my opinion. So,
Yeah, it's they've won one big prestige event. They did win another smaller event. Considering everyone else has had, a similar sort of run in terms of winning 2 out of a potential 7 events, with Na'Vi being the exception, having won the major out of nowhere.
Yep.
I think it's quite reasonable to say that at least, yeah,
I think
close betting favorite.
Even their major showing was a strong showing. They just get a very rough draw for. I mean, they get a rough draw for the playoffs. They have to play FaZe, and that's a close ass game. And we know we've heard before. We talked about before. They had troubles with illness, like they had factors out of their control that actually sort of hampered them there. They still go 3-0, like in the Swiss, of course, and like they beat Navi on the way, who are the eventual champions. And that FaZe game, they surely could have won that, and might even beat Vitality, considering FaZe did it. And then, I mean, yeah, anything could have happened. So that major is still a strong showing. They still had a very good season. So capping up with the London win is very deserved, in my opinion.
It was huge, yeah. And if anyone wants really to fully get their head around how they did this, the series to watch is the one against Vitality. Because that grand final against Na'Vi, I mean, come on, it's Na'Vi. We'll get onto them in a bit, but you won't really expect them to be a favourite coming into the series despite having made the final. I personally didn't feel very threatened by them as someone in the stands. I was like, it's Na'Vi, but we'll get into that later. But their series against Vitality, you really didn't have a superstar performance from Donk. Star performance, sure, but not a superstar. And instead, you got a massive series out of Shiro, and Chopper just seemed to have Apex's number just the entire time. Anytime they made a rotation, anytime they threw a little fake, Apex bit on it, Chopper knew exactly what he was doing, and that was a clinic. It was an absolute masterclass, so yeah, go back and watch that series if you had to pick just one out of this event to truly get your head around what Spirit were playing like. It was an amazing game. So that's Spirit, but let's move on to that other finalist team, Na'Vi. I've spent a large amount of this year talking about them as a fluke team, a team that doesn't really have the stars or the players to be number one and to consistently win events. And right here we saw exactly that. And they beat Astralis in the groups, which is no mean feat at this point. Astralis, probably one of the most dangerous group teams we have, but finally I think starting to slow down a bit. They also then take down FaZe in their seeding game. It's always a bit tough to determine how seriously teams are taking it, but I'll give them full credit for those 2 wins. It's just once you get to the playoffs, step in.
I mean, since this is the format where you have only 2 teams going on in groups out of 8, I think that game still matters quite a bit, because that is the difference between top 6 and top 4. Like, I think, especially in this format, I think they take that upper final quite seriously. When it's like IEM and like you win 2 games to qualify, and like then like top 6, top 4, it matters, but like it's not that big. Here it's like the difference between bottom half and top half. So I think here they take it quite seriously.
Yeah, that's fair enough. But yeah, we saw in the playoffs afterwards, they get the Verse Pro game, a Verse Pro who I wanted to be legit. I picked them on the double swing. I thought, once they made top 6, I was like, great. Just need to beat Astralis on stage, which is always very doable, and they did. But at that point, their run was it was about all they could muster. I think their Vitality win was a little fluky, so Na'Vi took care of business there, but the grand final was poor. I mean, especially going off what I said before, when I don't think they have the superstars, they don't have the players who can consistently turn up. They got one good half out of Wonderful, out of 4 maps, so 8 halves potentially. He could have played well. He played well for 1 half, and that was CT side Mirage. That was it. Like, JL, to his credit, I think at this point has to be approaching the top 5 riflers in the world in terms of legitimately being one of the best LAN players. But no one else on this team stepped up at all. I think Imo was another guy who had the occasional map, and in their big upset win, he was outstanding. But he just disappears off the edge of a cliff when it comes to certain big games, and he cannot find any consistent results. Bit notably absent as well. So yeah, it comes down to Alexibi's calling and JL trying to pull some magic out of a hat, and he's obviously not going to be able to do that with any consistency. So they go down 3-1 in what was a flattering scoreline, honestly.
I think couldn't watch this game. I was just getting out of the arena at that point, having put out our last bit of reporting. It does look like Navi had every chance to put in a much better showing, and like you say, they fail at that. But like, it's not like Spirit weren't letting them in, because they definitely had opportunities. Like after 10-2 on Ancient there, they actually pull it back quite well. They pull it back to 9-11. That's good. That's very good. And then you look at Dust 2, they lose the first half quite narrowly. Like they're down 5-0. It's still a 7-5 half.
Yep.
They tie it up 9-9. And I was like, oof, you could do something. Then they absolutely blow out Mirage. Like that's Spirit's backyard. At that point, like if you had won either Ancient or Dust 2, and then Navi do that on Mirage, that's huge. Like that's really, really huge. So it's they probably had opportunities to get into Ancient or Dust 2 at that point, and then Mirage is what it is. So then Nuke goes away, it does, but I mean, if you win either Ancient or Dust 2, you're on Anubis, and there I think pretty much anything could happen. I think they've beaten Spirit on Anubis in the past. Yeah, they have. They did that in Katowice.
Yeah.
Which I think it was like the first LAN map anyone won against Spirit when they had their full 5. So and that was like, maybe LXB knows something. I was almost half a year ago, but like it's yeah. They probably could. It looks like they probably could have done this, and I'm wondering what the fuck they do now. To be honest, I think Ime had a decent event, didn't he? Because I just looked at the stat sheet.
He ends on a 1.07 rating. He had maps where he played really good, and then he had maps where he was literally throwing the entire game. So I cannot say he played well. I just can't.
Kind of
on the average,
he feels kind of typical EM at this point.
Yeah, it really wasn't good. And yeah, if they won this, if they won that, ifs are like myths. Like they make you feel good, but they're completely useless when it comes to actually winning. And they didn't play well. Alexi B and Dust 2 had to do literally everyone's job for them to start coming back into it. They didn't really play that well. So yeah, cool. If they could, if they could find someone on this team who'd step up alongside JL with any sort of consistency, I'd have some faith in the roster. Unfortunately, they really don't.
Real quick, do you think they should make a roster change, and what should it be?
Honestly, take your pick, but I'd cut 1 or 2 riflers and take a gamble on someone talented. Because I don't think you can justify these levels of performance from him or Bit.
I think they're reaching a point where they should probably try to sell Bit, because I think Bit is still going to be very well regarded, and there's going to be people who really want to buy him. But he's just not really working out right here, right now. So I think you could probably still sell him, and I think business-wise, Navi would probably be wise to like put him out of this team, try to get someone to do a bit of a better job.
And someone else you can set up and expect to do something.
Yeah, and like if they keep going with him, there's a risk they run him into the ground, and then they can't sell him. So, I mean, this summer would be a good point to try to get rid of him, I guess. But yeah, Emma as well, of course. Like, there's moves to be made, but yeah, it's going to be a very interesting silly season. I think we've already started seeing some teams like Liquid and G2 obviously kick it off, but I think Navi should and will get into that, and if they don't, that's going to be really boring for the fall season. But I have no idea what they could even do, so it's going to be cool to see.
Yeah, I'll be intrigued to follow it. I'm not sure what direction they even take this, if they even try to rebuild, because every now and then we get communications from Blade, for example, that seems surprisingly confident and self-assured, considering his team literally cannot be relied on. I find that quite alarming. If I could rely on nothing on my team actually ever working, I'd be kind of shocked. Like, if the brakes on my car only had a 1 in 4 chance of working, I would replace them. But hey, stick with him. Your problem, not mine. Yeah, it's gonna be flattering, as I said, this result, the fact they made this grand final. But realistically, I still think Na'Vi are in dire need of repair, and the players just aren't good enough. So that's them. That's the big one, the big other finalist. Finally, let's touch on some teams who overperformed. Virtus Pro. It's nice and all making top 4, but we are far from seeing a proof of concept performance. Like the win against Vitality, was good. I mean, it's legit, it counts, it's out there. And it kind of set up a way you'd expect them to win, where you have Jame and Flit and Electronic being the guys you expect to step up. But the fact that they couldn't carry that over into any other matches, like even it carried over a little bit to a lesser extent against Astralis, but they couldn't find any form against Na'Vi. They didn't even look like they were particularly comfortable in their own pick. And the same thing could actually be said for their upper final game, where they got crushed by Spirit. They didn't seem that comfortable on either of the maps, despite Dust 2 looking fairly close. It wasn't actually. It wasn't overtime. They didn't actually look that threatening in reality. The scoreline's just really close. I think Virtus Pro are still another month or so away from being legit. I think they take this summer break and use it as just pure study. Like, you have to be boot camping, working. You can't spend 3 weeks away and then spend 1 week easing back into things. You know, the G2 Classic in the past where you come back off a break and you kind of shit for the first blast event or whatever happens to be in the way. They kind of have to take this seriously because otherwise, I think for themselves, the players, they have to do this because the upper management have been ruthless in the past and have not consulted them. I see changes coming otherwise.
Yeah, some people are talking about Norbert. I don't know if that's the move to make right now. I think you're right that they should just stick with this and like try to find some sort of winning concept of this over the summer, just pure work. You obviously have Electronic in there who is going to bring a different perspective. We know he is that sort of he's IGL brained, if we're going to put it that way. You're going to get perspectives out of him that could be valuable. They could be difficult to work with. They could be conflicting. There could be a lot of work to be done to make a working system here, but they have an excellent opportunity to do that here with the fall season coming up and like the break before then. I don't know. They have the World Cup thing at July, in the middle of July, which
it's the first
is
event back for most teams.
Yeah, for at least a lot of the tops, pretty much half of the top level.
The majority. Yeah, it's a very big event in terms of the teams we want to see. It's like the big names.
Yeah. So they have a big opportunity. They need to get working right now, but it's going to be I don't have a lot to say about VP. I didn't watch them. I think something about this gives me a bad feeling. Like something about this new VP with Electronic. I can't really put my finger on it, but it's something just feels weird here about having different perspectives from different kinds of players. Perhaps a bit of distrust in James' system starting to creep through. Both from fans and pundits, but also maybe from the players. And then you bring in a new perspective into there. It feels a bit like it's primed for some sort of electronic coup, which might be good. It might be bad. I have no idea, but something might change. I don't know what. They have a new coach as well to work with just since last week. So
that's the important part, I think, for me.
Yeah.
All this talk of systems and faith, belief, the fact that they have brought in a new coach, I think signals that they're ready to take a new approach. And I've made the case already as to why I think this was the right coaching move, as to why Zoma could potentially mesh better with Electronic than we expect, that he could allow James to integrate Electronic and Electronic's ideas more seamlessly than if it was still just Dastan and the Dastan James connection and the thing they'd created was still permeating so strongly. It was still very much that way or the highway. I'm sure we'll see some changes to their approach, massive changes. They still have, if they need to make changes, they still have options. Like Fame and Norbert, whilst I still think can be solid pieces and can play at a tier 1 level, they're not necessarily irreplaceable. They're certainly not. I think James, Flit, Electronic, I think it'd be silly to try and cut them at this point. But if you feel like you need an upgrade or someone with a different approach to the game to come in for Fame, for example, even though I do think he's a big multi-tool, I would be surprised if they do this. That's still one option on the cards. So rework the roster, rework the system more first after the summer, because you've only just got Zoma. Maybe he's not had the time to really apply anything. After this summer break, I expect that'll be the deciding factor. How they play at Esports World Cup, will probably determine a lot for the future of this roster.
Yeah, probably true. Probably true. We have one more team to talk about for Blast in our show notes, which is an interesting one. If I can kick this off, I get the feeling you'll get. I want to hear about what you have, like how they played, but my feeling about FaZe right now is that in what in theory was, like, in my opinion, a straight upgrade, putting Frozen in instead of Twists has destabilized this team in a way. And I would wonder if this maybe was reflected in the game as well, because since Frozen came in, he has been their best rifler. But they also, like, the results haven't really been there. So I don't know if, like, what was it like at Blast?
So at Blast, it was an interesting spectacle. I think a lot of us have gotten used to the talking point of Rops is too passive. But at Blast, it hit like a new level. In terms of not just him not willing to take opening engagements, that's fine. If he wants to contain Lurk more than he does like probe, the team has been successful in the past with it. It's just about when he then goes out onto bombs, like the team starts finishing towards the side of the map, and he's not coming out and trading. He's not attempting winnable 1v2s because he denies himself the timing. Like, he doesn't actually take that step forward when there was a timing to actually go find the first of those two frags or find the right trade. He's not taking that step forward, and that's more the issue. So it was really awkward watching Rops. I don't think the problem can be pinned down onto Frozen. He has been their best rifler, but I think that's more to do with the issues Rops is having mentally. Because again, there's not much like that's going to change for Rops in terms of how he approaches his game. I think a lot of it's him getting in his own head. He seems very vocal in a lot of scenarios. So I think he's almost like he might have like self-imposed sort of second calling angle to this, expecting a lot more of himself than what we realistically need. Because karrigan is always open to a conversation. That's always been the report, at least. He does take a lot of input from stars. And at this event, it was a calamity for Rops. It was awful. I mean, I guess Rain didn't have statistically the best event, but that's really not what I judged this roster on. My biggest concern was the passivity of Rops. I think actually the other pieces looked promising. I think one of my concerns was that Brokey was fool's gold for most of this year. That is he actually going to be like a real star level rifler, or is he just going to have the occasional map? No, he still is playing at that level. He's still being more aggressive than most other AWPers. He does not suffer from wonderful CT syndrome. He's not just hard stuck holding angles. He's legitimately a star with his AWP. So that's, I think, reassuring. The fact that Frozen's level hasn't dropped off dramatically, despite them not winning games, I think is reassuring. It's about finding Rops' place again. And then after that, being FaZe Clan. They don't need huge performances from the other two guys. They just need themselves as a group to be FaZe Clan. If they can get those top three firing again, well, especially Rops, the third of the top three, they'll be fine.
I think it's interesting looking at this the team profile for these teams. Rops is pretty much identical to Blame F in terms of trading. Like, both, obviously he's not really getting traded because he is that sort of lurking, baiting kind of guy. He's trading about as much as Blame F. The only difference is Blame F takes a ridiculous amount of openings on City side and a decent amount on T side. Rops is taking pretty much nothing. And I did check for this event. He was below Brokey in T side opening attempts, which is insane.
This is the new Brokey. This is the more assertive Brokey, and it's wild that even on T side he can surpass Rops, who has, I think, better opportunities to find openers on a lot of the maps they play well.
T side Brokey isn't even taking that much. He's taking 12%, but Rops is taking even less. So, like,
that's extreme. That's extreme.
Yeah.
No, I'm massively concerned primarily about Rops.
They do also have. I mean, they've spoken a lot in interviews about fatigue, which is probably a factor.
Mental fatigue must be huge. Yeah.
They have played a lot of events. It's been a lot of very deep runs. I think out of the top split, they might have some of the highest amount of maps in 2024 so far.
Oh, they do.
So in terms of big event maps, and that's big because it's like they play a lot of arena maps. They play, it's only the G2 guys who are ahead of them. So they play a lot of maps. They travel a lot. Obviously, the mental fatigue is going to be quite a bit. So I think that's probably affecting them quite a bit. Break is going to be well deserved, but then they're also back. Like, they're back sooner than some of the other teams. So I mean, the World Cup thing, it's going to be missing some of the top 10, top 15 teams. that
Not
have a
really the dangerous ones, though. Not the most dangerous.
not really the dangerous ones, but with a break and potential roster changes among those top teams, those are the teams that could maybe do something to break in the fall season. And I guess they have the benefit of the longer break. But I mean, it's interesting because Mouse spoke about the different thing. They took a break and they lost momentum and played poorly in Dallas.
Yeah, we had a conversation about this, though. They took their break at
Yeah.
the complete wrong moment, considering they are
Yeah.
not playing the last spring finals. Yeah, they should have just burnt a little bit brighter, a little bit longer, and then taken their break. That was just a bit silly, a bit misguided. But no, FaZe, just if we're going to touch on ESWC for them, which I'm just going to call it ESWC at this point because fuck it. They're not going to be a team I judge on this performance. I expect them to take minimum 2 weeks, like proper like break from the game. They need it. They need to reset. The capacitors are full. Like let them drain, and then boot back up again. Like this has been a really long and extended period of grinding. I mean, good results in a lot of events, but also clear fatigue setting in at the end. Take a real break. Take a proper break, and then we'll see you again after.
Yeah, they probably didn't take too much of a break over the winter either, considering they brought in Frozen just before the winter break. So they probably took a shorter holiday there to work stuff out, like with a new player. So they might be dangerous when they come back, but it has been a bit of a steady decline this season. I feel like like gradual but pretty steady, like slowly. So let's see what happens. Perhaps we're gonna move on.
Yeah, let's move on to the next biggest event, in my opinion, that we need to cover, and that's going to be Jonkoping, the big ESL Challenger event, being held at what used to be, well, I'm sure it still is called DreamHack Summer in all other contexts, but is no longer called that in a Counter-Strike context, because I guess we just hate ourselves. I don't like the ESL Challenger branding. Keep calling it DreamHack Summer. I don't care if it's not the Tier 1 teams. I think DreamHack Summer is just a cooler name, but whatever. That's the big event that happened up in the middle of shitville nowhere in Sweden. Despite it being their fourth largest city, you could have fooled me. By population, apparently it is.
It is?
I mean, I might be entirely wrong. I'm not Swedish, but I'm convinced that's true. But it was won by complexity. The second best North American team again. Because if they went out in groups here, I would have had them third. I'm going to be honest. I had them third if they didn't win this. But they did. And that's awesome for them. A real big momentum change. And Quacke, I'd like you to take over before I drown in my own.
Yes, that's apt because I was there. I was there for the whole event, which was amazing. I've never visited a Counter-Strike LAN before, in terms of neither as a spectator nor as a writer. It was an amazing experience. There might be some people I met who are watching right now, and thanks for hanging out. It was amazing. Like everyone I met was really cool. It was cool to introduce myself to some people I've met online, which was really, really amazing. We had some good games, some really good teams in attendance. It was a overall very nice experience. Talking about the event in general, I think there were, since you did touch on like DreamHack, I know you've been to DreamHack quite a bit, like as in the LAN event, not even just the Counter-Strike part, but I know you even volunteered, right?
I worked 5 years,
Yeah.
well, 5 events, not 5 years, of DreamHack. Once as like someone who's just doing like merch stuff, and then 4 times as esports security, because that is the best way to just watch Counter-Strike.
Yeah.
You just do that job. You say, yeah, I'll go to the Counter-Strike stage. I'll sacrifice myself.
Yeah. Yeah. So it was a great event. I know there were some criticisms of the event in general with how they laid out stuff. The turnout probably wasn't what they wanted either in terms of crowd, but we had a lot of Counter-Strike to watch. So we had both the ESL Challenger, we had the Swedish Elite Series, which was like the Swedish Championship was ending at the same time, playoffs in the same venue. Actually, just like behind the crowd in Challenger, there was another. But anytime you saw the crowd on the broadcast, right behind us, there's just this big orange wall, and then there was another stage setup with the Swedish guys. So sort of running back and forth between those, and we also had the BIOC, which the BIOC. Did you see? Can you guess how many teams showed up for the BIOC tournament? And
I know
they
it's
had
usually a
they
lot.
the winner gets 6,000 euros.
Yeah, I don't think. I mean, prize money doesn't seem to be the most attractive part of Biok for most people. Most people who compete in the Biok are just vibing. I think it. If I had to guess, I'd say a good couple hundred.
8 teams signed up for the Biok.
8. Why does no one
And
give a
then
shit anymore?
8, and then Aura played a Tele2 qualifier, which put them straight into the quarters and gave them 2,500 euros. So
Bloody hell! I thought people
8
cared about
teams
the
signed up on
Biok.
Facebook. No, they were. I would have expected like 20 teams, but 8
Oh
teams showed up.
fuck!
One of the team that actually went to the final and won 1,500 euros in prize money was just a bunch of guys from Jönköping who went there for fun and thought, well, we might as well play the Biok. They all of them had like 20 hours in the past 2 weeks on CS.
Counter Strike's dead, lads. Counter Strike's dead. Even the
Yeah,
Swedish children aren't playing Counter Strike.
yeah, these guys were like 25. So so yeah, they got stomped. It was amazing. It was amazing. This guy, one guy, nicknamed Hipster Jesus, he won the only round they won against Aura with on Ancient, and that was a 1v2 clutch. And I can imagine he was pretty hyped after that. We were pretty hyped in the crowd. So yeah. Anyway, we're to talk about Challenger. It was
Yes.
it was an interesting event because I think the final that I would have expected here is I would have expected Mongols to be in the final, and I probably would have put Complexity there. But there was also a part of me just saying they're gonna go out in groups, like because they are like. So I probably would have seen ENS or Falcons playing Mongols in the final, and then Mongols being the winner. Aurora maybe an outsider, but it was cool to see Complexity win. That was Complexity's first LAN trophy in 14 years, because the last time they won was IEM
Bloody
5.
hell!
Yeah, IEM 5. Like, what are we up to? Like, because they all have numbers. We don't care about that, but the IEM events have numbers at this point, and like.
Oh yeah, because the only CS event they've won really on HLTV is the online one.
Yep.
Wow.
2010 was the last LAN win for Complexity. There were some interesting storylines. Also, JT and TC, they made the final in Jönköping, DreamHack Winter 2018, with Bravado, which was even more like that was a really unlikely final to even play, and then they lose to ENS.
I
But they
remember.
got to, yeah, now they got to complete that storyline. And another fun thing, when they knocked out MIBR, Halzerk's brother, Helzerk, also played DreamHack a couple of years ago and knocked out MIBR at the tournament. So that was cool. That was some cool storylines I heard while I was there. Huge event from Elige. Halzerk, I think the stats won't really show it, but a couple of those games when you were like sitting in the crowd and watching, he had some very, very, very big impact rounds, like clutch rounds, or like 2vx situations where Halzerk was just pulling a lot of weight. And I think that was pretty big for him, having just re-signed for them. I think they played a very good game. So if just touching on complexity a bit more, Elige is the big one you have to talk about. 134.
Yep.
If there was an MVP award for this event, he would have got it. I think ESL did their like DHL MVP and he got it. But like if there was a real one, yeah. Complexity also like really resilient, because both in the final against Falcons and in the decider game against MIBR, they were down quite a bit on some of these maps, and they managed to like pull it back into a map win. So against MIBR, they were down at halftime in both Vertigo and Anubis, but they closed both maps 13-11 and 13-10. And on against Falcons, also on Vertigo, their own pick, they go down 4-8. And then they actually managed to pull it back to like 7-10, and then they just win straight to 13-10. So yeah, that's like a lot of resilience to be able to put it back like that. But some other teams to touch on, Falcons, I think, put in a big event ahead of the final. I was saying that like it's a very, very important final for both teams in terms of their seasons. Complexity, obviously, finally ending that trophy drought, and big for their season, having been pretty much nowhere all year.
Oh crap! Is that the doorbell?
I'll carry on.
Yeah, I'll be
Dupree,
back.
big player. I'll just keep talking to the audience, I guess. Hello, guys. Dupree, huge event from Dupree. 137. He just kept putting in banger maps. Sunpayas was pretty good. Madden, I think he had 1 or 2 games where he was good, but It was mostly Dupree and the Sampai's show. All the players were talking about Sampai's, how he was so insane. But Dupree was just on another level. Every single game he was just on point. Mongols pretty much falling short, being eliminated quite in the groups. I would have expected them to see them in the playoffs. Senzu, big event from him. So 140 even. He actually ends up the top rated player of the event, but he had a bit fewer maps. But like, I think people would have expected more out of them. What I've heard is that a lot of people think they are a bit readable in their setups, but they obviously they shoot really hard and have really good chemistry, and that's how you win in Counter-Strike. It isn't always about the big brain tactics. But yeah, also one team I really have to touch on here is Party Astronauts. They got knocked out in last place. They played a super close map against Falcons, which they probably should have closed. I got to talk a lot to Wolfie at this event, and very nice guy, but it was very much like the feeling that they probably should have won that map. And I hope T isn't back because he'll disagree with me. You win nuke there, a lot can happen on Ancient. Just a lot can happen on Ancient at that point. So a good event out of them. But yeah, I got to cheer for Alliance. I'll actually bring. Actually, we were a big Swedish crowd just at the front. If you go back on the stream, you might see me. We got these Alliance flags, which we could sit and really cheer for them because obviously, like, home crowd. It's the first time in forever a full Swedish team. It might be the first time since Stockholm even a full Swedish team are playing a Swedish LAN. It's like a big event. So obviously, we were cheering for them. I think they played a lot. The game against MIBR, it was a lot closer than the scoreline would suggest, because they actually started to build a pretty good comeback on Inferno, but then they sort of choked at the end. The feeling was very choky. And then on Anubis, I remember, dude, they lost the CT side 0-7 or 0-8 even. I swear every single round, it felt like they had a man advantage, but then they lost it. And like even eco rounds where they'd open up with 2 opening red flags on an eco and then lose either way. So it was sad to see them go like that, but yeah, I think they have a lot to work on over the off season. So yeah, are you back?
I am indeed.
Do you have? Yeah.
I have some thoughts about Jonkoping. I have no idea what you've said. Obviously,
Mm.
because I had to run downstairs as someone, fuck's sake, got the wrong fucking building.
Oh.
Yeah, my flat's in a series of buildings that, like, just like the building 1, building 2, whatever. And it's just they reset the flat numbering each time, so everyone keeps ringing the wrong doorbells.
Yeah.
It's just obnoxious. Oh man, I'm so sick. Just running up those stairs gave me a crippling headache. But all right, Falcons just had one of the most annoying, like, miracle runs ever.
Mm.
Each time they won a series, pretty much, it required a different miracle. I mean, excluding Party Astronauts, because it's Party Astronauts, which I didn't think is a miracle for Falcons to beat, even on their worst day. They needed someone to pull magic out of a hat that you just don't expect to really step up. But that Mongol series is lost if Madden plays his average game. But instead, he plays like he's back on Fun Plus Phoenix. He's in conversations for being another superstar rifler G2 could add to a Balkan dream team. And he's going absolutely ballistic. So that's not something you can really rely on. But it happened, and that cost Mongols the series, essentially. And then their big semi-final against Ents. It probably is still a win for them, even without Dupree playing like it's 2019. Or 2018, even.
Dude, he did it all event. It was insane.
He really did. He didn't play that level all event. He had a good event, but he didn't play that level all event. He had a good event. But no, that's just... These are things that are frustrating to me because I know I can't put stock in this. I want this Falcons like project to succeed in terms of the players involved. Like, I've been a fan of Madden and Snappy, following them from Ents. Sampai's, I think, can be legitimately one of the best AWPers in the world. He's not going to approach that top 3 like of insane guys, but he's going to be in the conversation for like top 5 if he plays at his best. And that really wasn't what what carried them all the way. So I was a bit frustrated on that front. Of course, disappointed that Mongols couldn't maintain their streak, keep winning events, keep placings up. Going out in groups will be frustrating for them, considering, I mean, of the teams here, they've been for the last 2-3 months playing the best Counter-Strike and probably would be most deserving of like being the favorite going into this, but they just couldn't make it happen. So yeah, those are the big takeaways for me personally. Everything else that happened seemed pretty predictable. Like I thought Alliance just go straight home. Sorry, Sweden, pretty predictable.
It was. I think all of us heading in on Friday there, we were like a couple of guys were coming in late, and I was like, yeah, I'm gonna see you when Alliance get knocked out. Like that was the feeling.
Yeah.
But they actually low-key had us believing the way they played on both maps. I don't know if you heard what I said about Anubis.
I did. I came back just before you started talking about Alliance.
Yeah, that stuff was sort of infuriating because I know they could have had at least one map, and that would have been big. Especially like all of these games now really matter in terms of the like major qualification as well. Like they're I don't know if they're in the closed qualifier territory. I don't know if they will be after attending this event because obviously that still matters. But had they won a map, I think it would have impacted them quite a bit. So and obviously just big for like the team. Very important for them. But you're right what you say about like Falcons. There was an air like I had a feeling before the final. I felt like it kind of sucks that Complexity versus Falcons is the final we get because both of these teams have had a poor season and probably need changes.
Yeah.
And I am worried that like taking this win is going to be like no matter who actually ended up winning for both teams. I had the feeling like, well, I hope they don't just win here and then go like, nice, everything is working. Let's keep going with this.
Mm-hmm.
Like when you, especially for Complexity, like this is one of the biggest wins. Like this is one of the biggest right now. Complexity headquarters is probably buzzing like it hasn't been doing for over a decade, and I do hope that doesn't then influence their decision making in terms of like, being realistic about what changes you need to make.
Yeah.
I did get the vibe they probably might not even be looking at like summer off season changes. I did also get the vibe they might instead be thinking of like relocating or spending more time in Europe or something. But I didn't talk to anyone at the event. That was just sort of what people were saying. So maybe there is an element of that. I don't know. But it might be a blessing in disguise, and it would have been the same thing if Falcons won, because at that point you're like, okay, so Dupree is a superstar player now we can rely on. Nice. Like Magis is solid. We just need to get Madden to show up a bit more, and everything is going to be fine, right? And that would have been the vibe. Maybe it still is, since they did make this final. This is like making this final next to Katowice is probably their biggest achievement all year. So at that point you're wondering like, what are we gonna do? Well, maybe nothing. Like, yeah. Yeah. So that was a bit weird, but who knows, man? Who knows?
I mean, it's a sentiment I've shared with some people recently. Is like we are in the pits, the depths of the Danish bot fragger IGL. Like, it's been horrible. And yeah, recently, even with the tableau stats that Nero put out, Snappy was playing some roles way above his level. Rotator spots that really need to have more impact, and that his personal play was just far below. So I think there's some real considerations to have, like some real talks to have if I'm Falcons about how the hell I keep improving, because this can't be relied upon, as I said. So maybe there's more cuts, maybe there's big signings. If players become available during this window, I expect them to reach out. I expect them to try. If they don't, expect them to be mediocre the rest of the year. And that's going to be a damn shame. A bit of a waste. But on that topic, Alliance, not on that topic, but just off that topic, Alliance are 65th in Europe. So I don't think there's a realistic chance. This is not up to date, though.
They do get a bit of prize money still from the event. It's like $2,000, but that's still quite a bit compared to some of the tier 2 events that the teams ahead of them are going to be playing. So It could be something. Could be. I don't know if that calculation. What date is that? Is it June 5th?
This is the update that put Imperial Female at 35th.
But what
Or
does it say? Does it say the dates? Actually, I can check myself.
Oh yeah, I'm in some websites.
Oh, you don't go on the GitHub?
Well, the GitHub isn't working. You idiot. I would if it was.
No, it
working.
is. It is.
It wasn't
they
working
moved
for
it.
me. It just gave me a fucking 404. So.
Oh. Yeah, they moved it to another repo.
I do love how this is our official Valve communication for the fucking ranking. It's a GitHub page. Like, why?
Yep. They moved it to a completely new repo. It wasn't communicated anywhere, but it was communicated in the commit that said removed regional standings, moved to Counter-Strike regional standings. So I'll send you a link for this because it's actually
it's very useful. Yeah.
It is very useful, and it actually gives a lot of illuminating information. All right, so the last rank update was June 10th. So the Sub-Zero E games, where they came second, also counted. That's another $3,000, and like if you're 65th, that's going to matter quite a bit. So,
yeah, they're likely to overtake a lot of these teams, but I still don't think they'll have it in the bag quite.
Not in the bag. I think they probably make it past someone like Para, who just haven't earned any money whatsoever.
No,
but
Para have won some stuff. Did you miss?
Just not in the past week or so, or did they win anything recently?
Let me see. I'm convinced I saw them win something. Yeah, they won Y Games Pro Series on the 13th.
And
that's
$11,000. Yeah. All right, never mind. They might be fucked. Anyway.
I do think they are, but it's all right. They weren't supposed to make it. No, okay. Let's move on to the final event. The problem in this weekend. Like, no offense to them, but they got royally fucked by the timing of every other event. It might not have been their fault really, but FireLeague was happening at the same time as two other events. Not only that, it was happening in Buenos Aires, in Argentina. It's not the craziest time difference, but it's still more than enough to make it almost unwatchable for most of Europe, especially if your first game of the day is still clashing with the bigger events.
Yep.
So it was difficult to follow. I watched 0 seconds of this. I tracked some of the games in the background, in the periphery. I had the scores updating. And honestly, there was a point where I thought Fnatic were going home, bottom of their group. And I was shocked, honestly. I was wondering how the hell they can explain this. But they managed to make that comeback happen. The comeback. They won the third map. Let's be real. It wasn't much of a comeback. They just won the third map. I was just anxious. I thought maybe they'd go straight home. In the end, they ended up making the final, beating NIP. So I think Fnatic can take back like some pride in this event. But the real story is, honestly, it's just 9Z. They've been electric recently. They get to play an event on home soil and win it in front of a raucous crowd like the arena. You mentioned it. I was watching it during the pre-show. It looked lit as hell. Yeah, honestly, this 9Z side keep getting scarier. They feel like, it's not ridiculous to say this anymore, they feel like just a Latin American version of Mongols. Like there's talent everywhere. They keep getting the most out of the players they sign and they add to this team when they've made changes. And now they're geared up to make another run. I mean, Dallas top 4 was something crazy for them. The fact that they've legitimized it by winning a tier 2 event, separating themselves from that chaff, I think 9Z are very scary coming to the next season. I honestly thank the heavens for most teams will be kissing like their beads, their prairie, their rosary. That's what it's called. That they don't have to face them at most events, but they are going to be at Cologne and the play-in, and that's already going to be fun. So yeah, big moment for 9Z. I think legitimizing their top 4 at Dallas and putting, well, a warning out to the rest of the scene that they are legitimate.
This is another retake the week W, because I think after Dallas we were talking about 9Z, and I think I put something forward like they have a legit chance of winning FireLeague, and like they might even be favorites to win FireLeague, and you were like, yeah, cool, and now they did. So just you and me being correct once again, which is always
too much credit for it, but yes,
it's always nice. It's always nice. Yeah, the true Counter-Strike predictors here. I didn't watch a lot. I didn't watch a lot of this. I watched a bit of NIP Fnatic because NIP are kind of big in Sweden right now. So it's sad that this clashed. I think it would have been awesome to see NIP like at least have a presence at DreamHack. I was really sad that I understand why they go to FireLeague. But like having copped an Eyeballers hoodie, I was a bit disappointed in how little presence other teams had there. Like Eyeballers they did big thing. They had like an expo. They were selling merch. The whole team was there. Like they had relegation games at the same time. All of them still traveled to Jönköping, booked an internet cafe to play their relegation games in Challenger League. And during the day, they were still at the event, like meeting people and selling merch and stuff. And that was awesome. I saw nothing out of Medisport. Godsent were too broke to even go there. They just had like a bunch of people come there for young gods out of their own pocket. But like I didn't see a single outside of those guys, the young gods guys, and like their families and stuff who were there. I didn't see a single Godsent jersey all event. I was the only one wearing a Medisport, any sort of Medisport merch. I didn't see a single Medisport guy there. Not even the players. I guess ZTR and Susp were there because they're benched. But I didn't see a single person or anything. Like in terms of the Swedish orgs branding themselves at DreamHack, just as a small tangent here, the big winners are Eyeballers and Little Mix, who are like the only ones with actual activity there. And it's so sad that NIP they've just made this push back into Sweden with like the majority Swedish roster, and no one's there, which is a shame because everyone was obviously in Buenos Aires. I don't blame them. The event looked sick. There was a chance for a big payout. They were one of the teams I think were in the conversation for the win. And big prize money. Not that I care too much about it, but like they're showing off. I know they also have a lot of presence in South America with like some of their other esports teams. So it's probably still big for them, but I would love to see them at DreamHack. Anyway, the games, that NIP Fnatic series looked like a banger. I watched a bit of Inferno before I went out, and then when I came home, it had like just ended. And that's cool. And then Fnatic heading into the final. I mean, 9Z is a big talking point, of course, but I think Fnatic making the final is also a pretty big W for them. It's showing like, yeah, this Blame F move made us take a step forward. Still some stuff to do, but we have taken a step forward, and that's probably very important to them. I'm a bit of a shame the other South American teams didn't do too much. I mean, Koi are the ones to make playoffs after topping the group. Best ones, I guess, but a bit sad that like Pain couldn't do more. Imperial probably could have hoped for quite a bit more. Red Canids sort of making their debut with Coldzera, and they do have a stacked roster. They probably could and should have done more. So like it's and Bestia, of course, being this home team, probably also would have hoped for a bit more in front of this home crowd. But yeah, I think 9Z big winners. Fnatic doing fine. I think even NIP can be happy with the quarterfinal, especially playing it that close against Fnatic, who end up in the final. So nice way to cap off the season for those guys, I guess.
It is. So that kind of wraps up FireLeague. I unfortunately don't have much insight to share. But yeah, next time, maybe another weekend, if possible. But I guess with the player break starting, you don't have that many options. So it is what it is. Thankfully, it was a great experience for those in the crowd by the looks of it. So at least they were able to put on a good show. And hopefully we see them have more events that like this that are bigger and cooler. Because a lot of the regional Brazilian, South American stuff is always very like small fish, you know. So glad to see some European teams go out there and actually show down with them. And 9Z, congratulations. So let's move on to a big piece of news, I guess. It's more of a story, a scandal. It's a thing that happened that I care about a little bit.
We love
this.
It's
mostly funny. Because this is old school esports stuff. This isn't new school. This isn't, contracts and very sanitized press releases. This is old school esports. 5W is a roster we saw assembled and we talked about. Obviously, on paper, the roster screams, we're playing tier 2 and we're going to probably beat you. Because in online games, these guys are fiends. Notably on the roster is Joel. Didn't technically match fix. Just like to remind everyone in Twitch chat, no, he didn't match fix, officially, according to the report. He just bet on his own games. I wonder why he did that. Anyway, Joel, the beast that is. Honestly, they played one event together. He averaged 1.6 rating and they won it. It was stupid. But there was Joel, there was Han and Red Star. Bulgarians, and as we all know, you can't be Bulgarian in Counter-Strike without getting a few accusations pointed or leveled at you. Thomas is the kind of the central piece in terms of, like, I think he's the caller, and he's
I
the
think he is, yeah.
player who put this team together, if I'm not mistaken. But I would like to ask him that personally. And then they've finished off with Prime Taps, who, if you remember from the big academy days, I'm not sure he actually spent any time with the main big roster, but I do know him from the academy. No, it seems he.
Yeah.
Just
he's
player.
We play Academy League Classic.
Yeah, I like this. I mean, I thought he was of the big
He's a
academy
fine player.
side. He was decent, like, compared to the rest. Because I don't think they had the most thrilling initial academy release. Like, their first academy release didn't feature Crimbo. It didn't feature some of these other big names.
He's a fine enough player, yeah.
He was solid, and he's played fine on this team as they've gone and won an event. But the important part is this 5W part of the equation. It was a bit confusing when it happened. We heard they were from Bangalore. If you followed the releases, that was where the org was supposedly from. And no one in the South Asian sort of part of the scene had ever heard of anyone involved in this org or heard of the org itself. They had no idea what was going on. It turns out we should have paid closer attention to those warning flags. The org was a scam. They played one event with this org, did 5W. Apparently, the org has cut off all communications from them, and it turns out really don't exist. And now the team have disassociated and are now orgless. So it's a very confusing situation that has left, honestly, one of the more promising tier 2 sides in terms of just being able to win these lower level cups and events. Orgless, after literally, 18 maps? Something silly like that?
Yeah, 18 maps, yeah.
So it's a ridiculous situation, which, again, reminds me so much of the old school days. This bedroom org not paying players because it's just one guy taking the prize money checks and then just deserting, disappearing into the night. It's old school esports, and it's, as much as it is a bummer for those players, it's kind of funny to me that we're still seeing this sort of nonsense pop up.
Yeah. So if you want to know more about this, does to India have a report out? I'm going to read a bit of it. They talked a bit to Thomas about this, written by ADC. So I'm just going to read a bit out about this. Several players during negotiations refused to sign unless they're paid up front. So Thomas, Harn, and Joel were all paid up front as proof of their dedication and to leave the contracts we were in, which was ITB, TSM, and 500 at the time. After we all signed, after the first 2 weeks, payday started, where the owners randomly sacked our general manager one day before they were meant to go out with the payments. And this caused a mess since our general manager was our only line of communication with the owners. This was rectified when they did email our coach once only, saying they want everything to continue, etc. After no communication for over 2 weeks and them not replying about a lot of factors, they ultimately stopped replying to everyone and several things started to fall apart, such as the social media guy vanishing, as well as everything from the organization coming to a stop. We as a team decided it's best if we just cut ties since our contracts were now voided as well as fraudulently created. We tried the necessary background checks for this organization, but all understood it was a risk, which they ultimately proved their legitimacy by paying a few of us up front. So, yeah. And as you said, I don't really understand the whole idea, but whoever they are, they should be banished from esports. They even talked to Lord, who has actually what his contract said. He actually put out like who the owner is and the company's registration number in India.
Oh, right.
It's all in this Dust to India article, which is amazing. So a lot of people I think would have thought like, why do you sign with this weird ass organization that came out of nowhere? And apparently the reason they did that was because they proved their legitimacy by being like, let's pay buyouts and 1 month salary up front to a couple of players who demanded that. So they were here and now they just stopped. They just left out of nowhere. So yeah, in a matter of 2 weeks, they went from continue the operations to we're just gonna ghost you guys. So yeah. Crazy
really
situation.
random.
Really random situation. Sad. I mean, they're looking to stick together. I hope they can find another org because I think being able to play this one event before all of this broke out is probably crucial for them because this has really proved their legitimacy as a squad. They absolutely, like, straight out of the bat, they stomped Endpoint, which is at least for Thomas, that's got to be pretty big and like still a decent team. Zero Tenacity have been hard on the grind recently. They beat them. Gaming Gladiators, obviously, fairly recent memory. They were at the major, and then they very narrowly lost to Gamer Legion before beating them big time in the playoffs, 13-2 on the final map. Yikes. And then 3D Max as well. 3D Max, who just qualified to Sky Esports India after beating Bleed in that qualifier. So that's also a pretty big scap. Also played at DPL. You can have your opinions about their playoff finish there, but they were there. And like straight out of the bat, some pretty big teams taken down there for a completely new squad with quality players that has only been together for about a month. Now they're free agents, and I do hope, like, if they hadn't played anything, this team would have fallen apart entirely and never been a thing ever again. But at this point, I think they can actually stick together and actually find a different org. So I'm happy for them in that regard. It was joked about. Someone called it match fixing United, which I quoted here as well, which is just hilarious. It is an interesting team for sure. I think especially Joel just keeps banging in these games, which is just slowly building up, like building back his reputation and like slowly legitimizing him again, which would be a positive. Like, let's be real. If Joel could turn out to be a good professional player, good in every regard, not just in the server, that would mean a lot for like himself. It would mean a lot for the Swedish scene. It would mean a lot for. It would just mean a lot in general because it would kind of prove Isak right in a way. Like, it would be like, yes, we did give him a short ban. We did give him a lot of second chances, but he has actually done something good with them, and that would be a really good thing to see. So, yeah, let's hope that happens with a better org.
Yeah, the Joel side of this is, it's always going to be controversial. And there are still those who maintain that he's not even a clean player. I don't know. It's always difficult if you're a player already suspected of things, like your team's upset a lot of people, and you're a heavily, if we're assuming a clean demo, instinctively based, like playmaking, lurking type character. Yeah, I mean, he does take a lot of openings, but that's just off his own reads, off his own back. It is going to be easy for people to level that accusation at you. So, yeah, this probably won't clean up too many of those people's doubts. But for me, what a ridiculous run of maps he put together. If you ever want to go watch any of them, the last map that they played, that Inferno against 3D Max, at halftime, he was shitting the bed. Just terrible. And I was like, okay, this game's going to map 5, so I went and did something else, came back, and he was top of the scoreboard, and they were about to win. Just on that T side, he just took completely over. 16-6, he ended the T side. A 10-round T side. Like, if this is all real, this is the biggest talent Sweden has.
It isn't even that. It wasn't even that bad of a seat side. He's still 80 ADR, which is fine.
Yeah, it's just he's taking a lot of silly risks and deaths, but he always lands the damage. Like, he's got crazy first bullet aim.
Yeah, and then the T side 175 ADR.
Yeah.
Woo! Yeah.
So
yeah, dude. I mean, it's got to be crazy to play with this guy. It has to be crazy. Like, yeah.
Especially,
it's got to be crazy.
I think it must be a fucking roller coaster though, because like that ancient map. I said this in my prospects for Joel. I was like, he's so instinctive and so heavily reliant on his playmaking that when it doesn't work, it looks like an absolute calamity. Like, it goes terribly wrong. And that ancient map was a perfect example. Like, he has a 50% cast, goes 14 and 22, and his rating ends up being so bad that across the series he averages a 1.36. On the maps they won, he was a 1.7 or better, basically.
Yeah, you're right.
That's how bad that map was.
Rating on HLTV is also average. Match rating is also average based on map length. So all of the other maps being single-digit maps, and then this one being in overtime, obviously weighs quite heavy. So yeah, that's why the average gets dragged down so much. But yeah, you're right.
But it's just the point. He is an absolute roller coaster. When he's on the highs, as he was for about 85-90% of the maps they play at this event, fucking unplayable. Actually unplayable. I've never seen anyone put up these numbers. So, a player to watch out for. If it's all real, goddamn, Sweden is gonna be the most terrifying country in like 3 years in Counter-Strike.
Next donk, for sure.
A very different donk, but yeah, pretty much.
Yeah, the next one. Yeah. Right.
But all right. Let's move on to the Eternal Shuffle, I think. Let's try and get this finished off. Get this wrapped up so I can get back to miserably working. Because I'm still in agony, which is fun. But all right, the first big move, the biggest one, the one that everyone, of course, has to have an opinion about, and has had an opinion about for the best part of like 4 months. G2 have cut Nexa. The rumor is that they are going to be signing Malbs MD. I'm personally wishing this is a 2-for-2 move, but we'll see what they end up doing. We know for sure right now, Nexa, goodbye. Which is so predictable. I mean, was there ever any doubt? Do you think there was going to be any first... Like, even if they make 2 moves, did you think anyone else would be announced to cut first? It had to be Nexa.
I think it had to be Nexa. I'm not sure this is the only move they make. It honestly could be the only move they make. I think there is a way to piece this roster together with Hooksy still on the team. But I do think it's going to be difficult, and it's going to mean someone sacrifices based on the player who's rumored to come in, which is Mobs MD. I think this came out last week even. So, oh no, it was this week.
Oh, it feels like a while ago.
If it does happen, which I think is likely, there is a way to put this team together. You're probably going to have to sacrifice either Mobs or Nico in terms of positions wise, and if you keep Hooksy as well, you have a third sort of aggressive player who, like Hooksy, might be the one taking the Nexa spots, which isn't perfect, but could work out. I think Nexa had to go. That's just the way it is. I think it is the start of a 2-part move. I think Hooksy will also be going. But yeah, Nexa has just been absolutely horrible all season. Kind of came to yeah, there is nothing else to say. Like he has been absolutely horrible all season. The move didn't make any sense from the start. Everyone who said so, which was pretty much everyone, has now been proven right.
Yep.
You start to wonder what if they kept JKS. Probably would have looked a lot better.
100%.
Yeah.
It's an entirely different roster if they keep JKS, and if they also, with JKS, have that one event where they play without Hooksy, you might end up still making similar moves further down the road, except you're improving a team that's really good to fucking great. Like, it's no longer a question of salvaging the rest of Nico and m0NESY's career. It's about, well, how many titles can we win if we make the right moves?
Yeah. So
it's a lot of predictable.
Big move. It's a big move that can have a lot of impact, but it's also difficult because I just don't know exactly what they're gonna do. If Hooksy also ends up going, there's a big question mark for leadership, in my opinion. A lot of people said Nico IGL just because Stewie was there. The impression I've gotten is that Hooksy was still helping out a lot from home.
Yeah, that's a coach. I'm perfectly fine with them not cutting him and making him a coach. Make him.
Yeah, I am just saying, like, when we're talking about Nico IGL, what has bigger stock? Is it the large amount of time he was IGLing for FaZe to very varied results, sometimes very poor, sometimes decent? Or do you take the one event where he was IGLing out of necessity, getting a lot of help from home from the actual IGL? And let's be honest, Stewie is also someone who I think would have had a lot of opinions and would have helped out quite a bit. So which you're gonna put more stock into when you're questioning, is Nico IGL gonna work? In my opinion, I think it could be a good interim solution, but if they're looking to make Nico the IGL for years to come, I think they're making a mistake. I don't think there is a good candidate for the leadership right now. I think if you believe you need to cut Hooksy, I think putting Nico on it for the upcoming season and looking to make a bigger move for over the winter, that's fine. But I don't really believe it. if it could work up perfectly. So I think G2 are in a very tough spot right now, which is such a shame considering how good they looked with JKS. It looked like this is a team that could keep going for all of 2024, maybe even further, and could be really good. And then they cut JKS, and they've actually just screwed up everything at this point. So yeah,
that's one of the worst transfer moves I think ever made. Taking a team that was in the running for Team of the Year because they'd won 2 of the biggest events of the year, and then deciding to cut a piece because what, he's not talking? Shut up, stupid idea.
Yeah. A lot of esports is just like friends. It is just friends being like, silly. I want to play with this guy because I like him, and then like, sure, that could sometimes be a factor in like when you want to make a roster move, that could sometimes work out because chemistry works out. But when you have something going well, that's not. It could also just backfire horribly.
That's just dumb. Put it bluntly, it's very dumb. But no, this G2 squad, if they cut Hooksy, that's the part that we're not sure of. Obviously, they have cut Nexa. If they cut Hooksy, I think it has to be Nico IGL because there is no IGL you can go and get that makes any sense unless you're putting Cadian on a rifle.
Which he didn't want to do that when he moved to Liquid.
He didn't want to do it on Liquid. He needs absolute buy-in. This is a team that already basically runs by committee and needs everyone to talk. How is that going to work? So no, I'm not having Cadian come in. I don't think there's anyone you really want to go poach out of most teams. So I think it has to be Nico IGL. And then you figure out the roles from there. You figure out everything else from there. The big difference between this and FaZe Nico IGL is FaZe Nico IGL was a bit of a power trip when the team was losing, and the team was not playing, like, it wasn't stacked with talent. It was a lot of older players who used to be really good. And so Nico made a massive power play in terms of becoming the IGL, trying to lead them forward, and to limited success. Like, there was some success, which wasn't much. So I would be willing to take the risk from the org, and if he's willing. Obviously, then we'll see. I doubt this. The more I think about it, the more I think they are going to stick with Hooksy, bring in a big-time rifler, and see if they can try and make it work again. Because it'll just be an improvement. But we'll see in the winter afterwards if they do end up making more moves. Because I don't know. I'm feeling more and more weak on the idea that they are going to bring in someone else for Hooksy.
Just refresh my memory for a bit. So Nico took over leadership immediately after Kerrigan left, or was Adren calling for a bit? Or did, because I know they played the Berlin Major with Neo, and I am pretty sure Neo was calling at that point. But
I think they did try some stand-in callers, but this is old lore, so I have no.
Neo was one of them. I'm 90% sure Neo was calling for that team. But I definitely know Nico was calling when coldzera and Brokey came in, basically until he left, because then coldzera took it over out of necessity. So
yeah, I'm not sure. I couldn't honestly tell you off the top of my head.
They didn't do jack shit at that point, is what I'm trying to say. They, even with coldzera and Brokey, stuff looked pretty good after a while. They didn't do anything. They had a couple of top 3 placings, but they didn't look good.
Superstar rosters. These are not rosters loaded with talent. This is like coldzera was another one of those. Hey, we're friends. Let's play together. And coldzera just was not the player he used to be. He didn't get the exact setup he needed, and just wasn't good enough to fight out of that sort of limitation. So no, these are far less powerful rosters in terms of the fraggers, but they're also they're obviously they work against the case if you have to make it in court for Nico as the IGL. But I'm just thinking they don't end up making this move, so I don't think it's relevant, and I'm getting hungry. Liquid have cut Cadian, which is predictable considering, well, the conversations, the results, the rumors. It's a silly situation they found themselves in, essentially trying to shove all in, but without telling the players first. Well, they obviously kind of had to communicate it, and everyone seemed up for it initially, but I don't think anyone truly grasped how much control or how much liberty they'd have to surrender to Cadian, who does demand a lot of his players, with success on a lot of occasions, but here clearly just wasn't able to get it done, and they've had to move on. Who's coming in? I haven't the foggiest. The rumor that I believe it's Richard Lewis brought on stream is that Zeus is also likely to be gone, and Twist is being considered for IGL, but those things are not confirmed and cannot be presented as such. They're just the rumors.
That is also so fucked, considering you had 3 perspectives clashing in this team. You had Zeus, Yakinda, and Cadian. And when you decide to cut 2 of them, you decide on a 4th perspective, which is going to be the leadership, and that's just funny, in my opinion. If Zeus is out, that would kind of line up with the fact that they're trying to sell skulls, because that's also probably true. That's being reported. So they have some options for players coming in because they have 2 spots. They need to fill the op spot and they need to fill an anchor spot, which is, I mean, it makes it easier to build a team when you have a lot of options. But I'm not at, yeah.
No, this might be eventually where we finally see JKS actually get a team, because it depends on if they actually want him, but this is the sort of thing I think he's been holding out for. If we understand what other people have intimated, is that he is available to play. He just doesn't want to play for the wrong team, and so I do think we're going to see him. If anywhere, it'll be this Liquid roster. And then in terms of the calling situation, in terms of their AWP, Lord knows what's going to happen there. Sorry for being off screen, everyone. I'm currently plugging in my headset because it started beeping. But no, that's most likely what's going to happen. In my eyes, we'll see. I mean, I was kind of right about ITB rebuilding with the Guild Eagles guys, so maybe I have a good read on this. But it's very iffy. There's nothing confirmed.
Yeah. I have no idea what the fuck Liquid are gonna do. I have no fucking idea. I mean, they end up in sort of the same kind of race that, because it's the off season and we have a pretty early cutoff for the major. So I think a lot of teams are going to scramble to make moves in the next week or 2. Next week might be only Eternal Shuffle, to be honest. Next week's so getting 2 players and maybe a coach. I have no idea. I have absolutely no idea. I'm not even going to make a comment. I have no idea what the fuck they're going to do. Yeah. Sucks to suck, I guess. Kadian is definitely going to land on his feet, I think. I think this stint hasn't painted him in as bad a light, especially when we got the report from HLTV saying that, like, oh, it is because they don't agree with this perspective. There's still a lot of people still remember the heroic times, and now it's like it could work. It could work out. So, yeah.
Right, that's the Liquid news. It's not much news. All we know about is the cut that we expected. But let's go on to ITB. I briefly hinted at this, but they have made 2 of the 3 moves I expect them to. They've brought in Synopsy to IGL, Juan Flatcher on the rifles, Kioz as one of the support pieces, and Juve on the coaching position. So we're missing 1 player. Technically, my prediction can still come entirely true, but for now, it's only those 2 pieces that have been confirmed. I'm excited, honestly, about the Synopsy Juan Flatcher part of this. I am very indifferent, to be nice, about Kioz's involvement. I was not a big fan of him on Gamer Legion.
Very well documented.
Yep, I have been borderline vitriolic, so I'm not going to keep rubbing it in. Was not a fan. Still not a fan of this signing for this team, but hey, if he's playing support roles and he works with the team in terms of vibe, because apparently he had a great vibe in the Gamer Legion camp, it could be still a positive addition. So I'm not going to be too negative off the bat. That's just what I'm going to put out there.
I think you're right about the thing with like the ITB guys. Or you were right. I think it's a good move. I think the Kios thing was really funny because when Smooya was on HLTV confirmed when they were in London, and it was so funny. He was like, just ask me what players you think are joining, and I'll tell you if you're wrong. And they go Kios, and he's just no. And then the day afterwards, they announce him. So that's just so fucking funny, to be honest.
That's a certified Smooya moment, I'm going to be honest.
Yeah. Supposedly there were some players ITB wanted to get. He said this unconfirmed as well. I haven't seen the clip. They're saying Sense and Sly were 2 of them. Sly would be cool.
Ooh.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm still holding out hope. Let's put it that way for Sly. I mean, he's not had the greatest run since he left 777 the first time, but I'm still. Oh, even the 777 stuff wasn't that great, but I'm still holding out some hope because I like the guy and the demos I saw were positive.
Smooya vetoed that by saying, as if I have to play with these guys, I'd rather play for free. Like, as long as I don't have to play with them, I can take as much salary cut as you want, because I just don't want to be on the roster with these guys. So that's probably why they ended up getting Juan Flatro on those guys, because they were like, this Smuja basically put pressure on them to build a better team. I have no idea who this fifth is. What do they need? They have Synopsy using IGL. I would say he's also kind of a lurky guy. Am I wrong?
I feel a little bit. I feel a little bit off there. I'm going to be honest. To be honest, it's really hard to sometimes think back on Guild Eagles / before then. What were they? Bad News Eagles. And define a playstyle, because it was very brawly and very chaotic at times. But I feel like Synopsy was a part of the pack and brawl. But no, I might be entirely wrong. I feel like he was. But what matters is, more importantly, he's for an IGL significantly better fragger than other teams have. It's just a question of if he's a better IGL, but we'll see about
that. I don't get the impression that he's like this huge brain IGL, and that's also not what wins you maps in Counter-Strike. BNE were an excellent example of that. It's not like they were tactical geniuses. They were probably just the best. They probably just had the best chemistry out of anyone in the scene at that point, and they were winning off of that.
Yeah, eventually it fell down, but when it did work,
yeah, for a long time it was working quite well. So I'm looking at the profiles right now. I think you need an anchor.
Well, yeah, probably. You probably.
I think you do need an anchor for this team. Dude, I would not think it's impossible Nexa ends up here. I think Smuja and Nexa are probably like, I think they hiring 2 FPL gods, and then Kios, who I think is also just someone Smuja quite likes. Hiring 2 FPL gods tells me that they are just sort of hiring, like, again, friends. And I think in that sense, it could be realistic to see Nexa. It wouldn't work, but
hey, their level isn't. We're not talking about a G2 team here, so I don't think Nexus actually is that bad a move. I respect Nexus' ability to contribute to a team that isn't competing for #1 in the world. Honestly, I don't think that's a bad move.
Yeah. Like we said last week, anyone who ends up on a tier 1 bench is eventually going to play for Into the Breach, so it might as well be KDN as well. So, yeah.
Fair. No, but you remember Nexon crazy. Nexon some other rosters, like, he's had positive contribution to a number of teams. And yeah, his OG G2 stints were bad, but I don't hate him in tier 2. Like, as a signing for this team, it'd be probably a decent coup. I think otherwise you'd be scraping, looking for players who have been cast off by teams you already want to be better than, which would be a bit counterintuitive. So I think that'll be a solid roster, a solid enough roster. Not to labour the point too much, but I don't think we need to move on and quickly finish off these other guys.
We do indeed.
Pause. So Metasport, they have finished their roster, or put their roster back together with Sapek, which to me seems like a pretty random move that I don't really understand the point of start to finish. So, Quacke, if you'd like to inform me as to why this is genius.
He plays CTR spots. He's a pretty good player. I think what they need to do, I talked a lot about Sapek last episodes, but I think he just didn't really work out in Eyeballers. I think Eyeballers, what JW said is they kind of wanted to keep him. They're kind of indifferent about him leaving, but it was his initiative to not resign, and they probably would have been fine with resigning him on a new contract.
Yeah.
Supposedly the same day ZTR was benched, they started cautiously looking, like Eyeballers cautiously started looking for players. So Zapik was definitely always in the conversation. I think he's shown a lot of promise in those sort of spots in the past. My top 3 for that team in those positions would have been, or top 4, it would have been Sapek, Spook, Bob XD, and Poi. And Poi is a little bit of a risky signing because he's 17. It's not guaranteed he actually wants to go full time at that point. He might just want to finish school. Some players.
Is he an upper?
No, 6 is the upper. Poi would fit perfectly in those spots.
Oh, right. Yeah, no, he's not. Okay, I got confused for a second. I don't follow this low-level stuff as much as you, so yeah, fair enough.
Yeah, Spook is pretty committed to Johnny Speeds. They are looking to make it as a 5. No one's leaving there. And both Spook and Bob XD sometimes your reputation gets hurt by the players you play with, even if you don't really do anything. So Spook, he's obviously had the radar hack accusations in the past, which is completely unfounded. Like there's absolutely no legitimacy to that. But that's still, some TOs like treat players like Spook very poorly for that, and that's obviously business-wise, that's a poor decision to make in that case. So Topic, I think it could work out. He's been with some of these players before. He was in Young Ninjas as well, of course. So, I'm cautiously optimistic for this move.
All right. Furia are cutting Kai, who has been dog water, but to be fair, I don't think anyone playing that 5th spot on Furia really has a great time. And they are in discussions, or rumoured to be talking to Phelps and Skulls, one of which I think is the worst idea they could go for, and the other one I think might be fine, but still not particularly promising. So obviously Phelps being the terrible idea, and Skulls being not the worst idea, but I still don't see how this gets much better. Que Serato, you could have saved yourself. It's your fault. It's your fault.
Phelps being a terrible idea, he probably agrees it's a terrible idea for him, because what I heard was that he just straight up said no. They wanted him, but he said no. So, and Skulls, I think they end up with too many anchor players. Yeah, that's
the
just
idea
kind
of
of it.
Skulls signing is to free up Cello a bit more.
Yeah,
is what I've read from other people who are
wow.
probably more familiar with Brazilians, I guess.
Furia really just don't have a hard anchor. That's interesting. Because they played Kiserato on some of the maps, and Kai played some of the anchor spots, and Cello also played some of the anchor spots. So yeah, you're probably right that they're trying to free up Cello. Still end up with, like, Kiserato is in a lot of ways sort of an anchor player on CT
That's what
side.
I've always considered him on CT side, at least.
Yeah, which is interesting. I think Skulls is probably the biggest. If Skulls ends up sold from Liquid wherever he goes, he's probably going to be one of the highest value Brazilian players in tier 2 in terms of like how much he can bring to a worse team. Furia are drifting into like tier 2 territory. I think if they are like, the only reason they aren't is because they keep getting invited to tier 1 events.
Yep.
So I think Skulls would definitely be a player who could revitalize them in that sense. There's a lot of question marks here. There's not a lot more to remark on. Kai was just too early, and I gotta feel bad for the bug guy, to be honest, because you come up. What are you? Yeah, 19 years old. You come up from the academy temporarily. I think. Remember, this was just a trial thing from the start.
Yeah.
I don't think he was announced as a trial, and I don't think he was ever announced to like being on the team. And then everyone on Twitter is saying, I think if Maui Snake every other day he was saying he's the worst player in tier 1 right now, which is true, but that's got to be rough. So, yeah. Sucks for him, I guess. Good luck, Furia, with Skulls, I guess, because I think that is going to happen.
Right, and now finally, one more Swedish move. Wildcard are looking to change up their roster, bring in Fuzi and Susp, or Suspi, or whatever I'm supposed to pronounce that. It would be nice if there was some clarity, but hey. More importantly, they're going to be cutting Slight and Infinite, who I've never thought much of.
Infinite has already been out since March, but they've just been playing with. He is the official replacement because they've had a lot of stand-ins for Infinite in between there.
Yeah, so that's the changes they're making. I've always liked Wildcard just because I think Jabe is a legitimate talent. They've got a real IGL in Stanislaw, no matter what you may think of him. And I think Zonic's actually a really solid just piece, like in a team, who can do a variety of things. I mean, at this level especially, I mean, we're not trying to win majors at this point. I think you're fine with Sonic, sorry. And he's been kind of fragging, so happy for them to keep Sonic around. Bloody hell, keep trying to make that a Z. And I think, as much as Slight and who's the stand-in at this point? Grizz? Yeah. They've been on the team. Well, Slight has been on the team a while. Grizz is standing in obviously for Infinite. They're just not irreplaceable by any stretch of the imagination. The only reason they weren't, I think, changed out sooner was because the upgrades you'd think in NA are not available. Like the players you'd want to bring in through the North American scene are just not available, and then the rest are just not good enough. So I'm liking this move. It's a big move. It's always a risk to start diversifying your roster in NA, but it's necessary because North America just doesn't have enough players. There's too many. I don't know. Too many people playing Madden and Valorant and other silly stuff. Like, play Counter-Strike, you idiots. So here we are. They're having to upgrade in Sweden.
This is a big report from Dust 2. Both Sweden and the US, we collaborated on this. SUSP, I think the report officially says that they are close to signing. I think anyone with a brain can figure out SUSP is signed because he got bought out publicly. So he got bought out for quite a big amount of money. So this team looks likely to come together. They are taking the worst part of our wild card and putting in some very good pieces. This is really, really, really interesting. I think this is. You can have opinions on Stanislaw, as you said. I think he is a bit outdated in terms of his style. Maybe a bit stubborn with like this is how we used to play Counter-Strike and like maybe not really up to meta. But I think Sonic is really solid. Tony, there's a big risk you have to eat your mousepad after this. They have a good chance of making the major with this team, I think. Fuzi is just really solid. Really, really, really solid players. No doubt about that. For them as well, it's a good move. They're going from. I saw some Swedes saying, "Why would you make this move? They're moving to NA. They're moving to like a tier 2 NA team. Why would they do that?" Well, the reason is they're moving. They have a good chance of making the major at this point. If this move happens relatively soon, because this is a team which could definitely fight through the RMR and make it into the major, and that is big. I love this move. Yeah,
they could sit around and wait for Sweden, but it's going to take another 3-4 years for another realistic Swedish team to come through, sign these guys up, try and make something happen. So yeah, take the risk, go to NA. It's a lot easier to make it through there.
Yeah, it's a shame this is at the end because I could have talked for ages about this. They're keeping the good parts of wild card. They are getting some very good replacements. It's a very ambitious move, wild card, making a serious bet here to move into tier 1, and I think they can do it.
Yeah, I think that's a bit ambitious to call them this move good enough for that, but it could develop as such. I mean, we saw some crazy stuff from Fuzi towards the end of his stint in China, and Susp is definitely talented. So,
I mean, with the pieces they have, all of these players could be on a tier 1 team or have been on a tier 1 team, and so if this works out, I think they are there. Like that's the ceiling. They could move into tier 1. So yeah, good team. Excited for this. Let's fucking go.
Right. Prospects of the week, and I'm going to desperately ask you to make this as quick as possible. I'm going to start with Ultimate. He plays in Polish teams, which none of you ever watch. He had a crazy week statistically. And yeah, he's young. My God, I'm about to die. All right, next. Sorry, I'm going to type up bigger things on the graphic I'm going to make on Twitter, but I just cannot right now. I just can't.
That's amazing.
It's 2:10, I still haven't eaten, and I'm dying, so let's go.
I never paid any attention to Ultimate, so that's great. I'm going to talk about Poi. We had the Swedish Championship ending this weekend at DreamHack. Also, honestly amazing. We saw Young Gods versus Little Mix. Young Gods making a sensational run to top 3 in the championship. Little Mix knocked them out. That game, there was a big, big, big crowd for Young Gods who were very, very, very loud, and the Little Mix crowd was arguably even louder. It was honestly amazing. We made more noise than the Challenger crowd did sometimes. He still put up a 160 rating. Like it's like over the championship, I think he was the second highest rated or third highest rated with 120 something. Some of these maps, he was just stomping. Everyone who plays with him says that like he's 17, but he plays like he has the mentality of a 27-year-old. He is so committed. Someone is going to pick him up. It's going to be big. Next to Joel, this is the next big guy in Sweden, I think.
Yeah, every time he gets a frag, goes, "Oh, I'm back." That's the mentality of a 27-year-old.
Yeah,
my knees. If only I had my knees. Right. Thank you all for tuning in. I'm going to wrap this up quickly. Remember to become a member if you want all the extra content, as well as access to the Q&A and polls to do with prospects. I'm Kingt, that's Quacke. Leave a comment telling me why we're wrong, and we'll see you in the next one. Goodbye.